All right, welcome to Chord Voicings. In this course, we're going to talk all about chords and how you can change them up, how you can make them sound better, notes that you can add to them, how to play basic chords, more advanced chords. And so this is going to be a whole lot of fun. And if you've not already taken a look at our Chord Basics series, I invite you to pause this video and head over there and check that out, because that's going to give you the foundation for what we're going to work on here. In that series, I teach you 3 chords, the 1, 4, and 5 chord, and that really is the foundation for what we're going to expand on here in our chord voicings. And as we do this, this is going to set you up for success as we move on into our chord progressions. So again, if you haven't taken a look at Chord Basics, go ahead and pause it, check it out. But if you have taken a look, let's go ahead and dive in. All right, chord types. Now there are a variety of different chords that you can play, but there are basically 4 different types of chords that you can play, or qualities of chords. You've got major, minor, diminished, and augmented. And then you can take that and you can apply that to either 3-note chords or 4-note chords. And so that's what we're going to take a look at here. And we're going to start off in the key of C major. All white keys. And there are a couple of things that you need to remember as we do this. We're going to talk about scale degrees. And in any scale, any major scale, you're going to have 7 notes. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then the 8th is repeated. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the 8th is repeated. Also, we're going to talk about steps, half steps, whole steps. And the main thing you need to remember is a half step is 1 note to the very next note. So from C up to the black note, half step. To the next note, half step. Half step, half step, half step, and so on. Now if you take 2 half steps and put them together, here's 1, here's 2, that gives you a whole step. So from C to D is a whole step. D to E is a whole step. See, here's a half, half. There's your whole. Notice there's no note here in between E and F, so that's a half step. If you move from F to G, notice there's a note in between, so that's a whole step. Whole step, whole step. From B to C, there's no note in between, so that's a half step. So again, you got half steps, you got whole steps, and then we've got scale degrees, and those are some things that you just want to kind of keep in the back of your mind as we work through this. Now, first off, we've got our major chord. Now, we're going to have C major. And a major chord is made up of a 1, 3, and 5 in the scale. Of the 1, 3, and 5 in the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right there. 1, 3, 5. We're not making any alterations to it or anything like that. Just playing the notes in the scale. 1, 3, and 5. There's C major. Now then, if you want to make your major into a minor chord, you're going to take the 3rd, and we're going to lower it a half step. And so anytime you lower a note, you're adding a flat. Anytime you raise a note, you're adding a sharp. So here we're taking E, we're going to turn it into E flat. We've lowered it a half step. There's our C minor chord. Okay, 1, 3, 5 still. And it's an E flat. That's our C minor. Now, if we take our 5th degree and we put it as a flat and lower it, now we've got C diminished. It's real kind of ominous sounding, kind of sad, almost mad sounding. C diminished. If we go back to our C major and we take our 5th degree and we raise it a half step, remember we're going to add a sharp when we raise. That gives us C augmented. Notice this has almost like a floating quality. You've probably heard something like this. If you've ever watched a movie and they have like a dream sequence, you've probably heard something like... That's a whole tone scale, and that's built up of whole steps all the way up. There's no half step in between. And that augmented chord that we just played, that's kind of built off of that whole tone scale. Okay, so C augmented. So again, we have C major, C minor, C diminished, and C augmented. And those are our 4 main qualities of chords right there, and that is the end of our 3-note chords. Just playing a triad, I'm playing the root in my left hand there. Now we're going to move on to 7th chords, and we're going to have a whole series on 7th chords a little bit later. But I do want to give you an idea of the qualities of chords that you can play with 7th chords. So again, we've got our C major triad, C, E, G, 1, 3, 5, and we're just going to add the 7th in there. We're not changing anything on it. Here's the 6 and the 7. And this would be our C major 7 chord, okay? It's kind of got an open, happy quality to it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take that 7th, we're going to put a flat on it and lower it a half step. This is now C dominant 7, or C7 as we refer to it. So you got major 7, and now we've just got C7, which is our dominant. And notice, you've probably heard something like this. Notice that that chord wants to go to the other chord. So you had this, and it wants to go to this. That's because it's a dominant chord. Dominant chords want to have some resolution to them, and so that it's basically because it's this half-step movement. You got the B flat wants to come down to A, and it is functioning as a dominant, which is a 5 chord. So the 5 wants to go to 1. So if the C was the 5, 5, 6, 7, takes us to F, which is the 1. So again, we've got C major 7, C dominant 7. Now, if we take this, as you see, that dominant 7th has a major chord with the flat 7. If we take our 3rd and lower it a half step, remember this is your C minor chord, and then we have a flat 7. Listen to how that sounds. You've probably heard this before. That would be the intro to Billy Joel's Piano Man, and he's playing a minor 7 chord at the beginning of that. So again, we've got C minor 7. So again, major 7, dominant 7, and minor 7. All we had to do was lower the 3rd a half step, and we've got a flat 7 as well. Now then, this is going to be a little bit weird chord. We're going to take the minor chord that we have here, but we're going to raise that 7th degree back up. Ooh. You've probably heard this like in a James Bond movie. This would be our minor major 7 chord. Okay, so again, minor 7, minor major 7. Real funky sounding right there. Now if we come back down to our minor 7 chord, and we take the 5th and we lower it a half step, we've got our diminished chord now. Now there are 2 ways of playing a diminished chord. You've got a half diminished and a fully diminished. And so when you've got this diminished chord, C diminished, with your B flat there, so we took that 7 and we just put 1 flat on it, that's going to be your half diminished, C half diminished. But if we add another flat, which makes it a double flat, when we bring it down here, now it's C diminished. A fully diminished chord is just called diminished. If you want to, make a distinguish kind of between a fully diminished and a half diminished, you just say half diminished and the diminished. So now we've got C diminished, and you've heard something like this, something like that, or this. It's very ominous sounding, lots of tension. So that's C diminished, half diminished, minor 7, minor major, dominant, and major, okay? Now that we're back up to major, we got 2 more chords. Now remember, we had our major chord, minor, and diminished, but we had 1 more chord in there, and that was augmented. So we took our major chord, and we raised the 5th up. It's got that floaty quality to it. Remember? So we've got our augmented chord, and we're going to add in that major 7. So this would be a C augmented major 7 chord. It's a real funky chord there, okay? And then if we take that major 7 and we lower it a half step, now we have an augmented dominant 7. Now for all you music kind of theory guys out there, you could look at this and just say, oh, it's a C7 flat 13 because of the A flat, and you would be correct. But we're also looking at this as an augmented dominant 7th chord, okay? So this one functions because it's dominant, just like we played before. You can also do. Notice that difference versus. It's just got a little bit more color to it. That note right there. So again, just to kind of recap, we've got our major chord, our minor, diminished, augmented. Those are our triads. Then we get to our 7th chords. Major 7, dominant 7, minor 7, minor major 7, half diminished, diminished, augmented major, augmented dominant. And that's our different types and qualities of chords. And as you can see, there's a variety of different ones there, but it's not very difficult, especially if you take this formula that we've given you and apply it. We've got a PDF here for you to use so that you can kind of visualize it. And as you work through it, kind of take your time, seeing which notes that you need to raise or lower. And then you can take that and you can apply that to our practice videos. And that'll help you work through all 12 keys. So be sure to do that and have fun practicing.